to Peru? How about the jungle? Probably not. Have you ever been surrounded by tropical animals, experienced rain showers, or taken a boat across the river to get to school in the morning? Of course you haven't. I mean, how many cities do that? Well, this guy has. Although he might have spent most of his life in America, his early years took place in Peru, specifically the jungles of Iquitos, the largest city of Peruvian rainforest located in the Amazon River, a place where civilizations meet nature. Our guest today will talk about these and other unique experiences he had growing up in Iquitos, Peru. The Humanities Communications Art Department at NCC presents The New Directors, the show that introduces you to television's future writers, directors, and personalities. And now, join our host, Nadia Ayad.
Thank you for joining us on today's edition of The New Directors. All of the people involved in this program are students in the television production course. They are directing, switching, controlling audio, operating cameras, and acting as talent for the first time today. The guests you are about to meet are students who, when not on camera, are behind the scenes working hard to bring this program to you with as few mistakes as possible. Each student will write and direct 3 different productions. This program will give them the opportunity to talk about themselves and the productions they are planning, as well as give you the chance to get to know them and watch their progress. Our guest today is currently taking the Film and TV Production course at NCC. He was born in Peru and lived there for 9 years before moving to the US. We would like you to meet today's guest, Favio D. Hi, Favio.
Hey, Nadia. What's up?
So, we know that you were originally from Lima, Peru, which is the capital city of Peru. But you actually lived in the jungle section of Peru by the Amazon for a couple of years in your early childhood. Can you tell us what it was like growing up there?
Sure. Actually, yeah, I was born in the capital, which is Lima, Peru. And then, like, my dad, he was actually in the Navy. So when he was in the Navy, he had to be relocated. It was like around the time that I was like between 2 and 4 that I had to go there. And actually, it shows it right there. He was there, and just like Iquitos is kind of like the jungle part of Peru. It's like by the Amazon, and so I was there between 2 and 4. My sister was born around that time, I remember.
Oh, wow.
And there's 2 parts. There's like the city part, which is right there that I was at, that has like pavement and building structures. But then my dad, I remember taking me there like with his motorcycle, and like a kid from South America used to play soccer and ride bicycles, kind of like a stereotype.
Nice.
Yes, but I mean, I remember that part. But the surroundings is what I remember the most. Like right there, like the jungle part is actually where I have like most of my memories. In the morning, I would take the boat to get to school. Looks like that.
Wow.
Like the houses actually kind of look like huts, like they're made out of hay, like you can blow them over. Maybe they are, I don't know. But I mean, like when it rains, it's like a rainforest, so it rains really hard, and you can actually take showers outside naked.
Really?
Yes,
Did you do that?
yes, I did. And the next day there were huge grasshoppers all over my wall.
Wow.
So animals there are pretty much common when you go there, like even for tourists, it's like pets. So I mean, you see them all over the place, so it's very common for you to see them all over the place. And I had 2 macaw birds, the ones that I had with red, and eventually we let them like free because I mean they're just like, you know, they're in the forest. And I remember having a little monkey, they're called marmosets. Nobody believes me when I tell them this, but I had one for like 2 days and it was just chilling with me outside. Like when I was outside, like, you know, in the sun or whatever. I miss the little guy, but they're crazy, so you can't hold them forever. So that's why I only had them for 2 days. But like I was in the bathroom one day. And then I walk in and I close the door because I was little. Then I turn around and I see a huge like tarantula, like a black spider, just like crawling there slowly. And it pretty much kind of stuck with me for the rest of my life. Like, I just freaked out and just like walked outside. And I just remember like I don't know what my dad did with it, but that's what I remember. So I think after I kind of developed like a kind of like arachnophobia. So whenever I see a spider now, I just kind of look at it just to make friends with it, and like eventually kind of just like, you know, I'm cool with a spider, but unless it's big, then I'll just kill it because it's either me or him, and like I'm not gonna, you know. But other than that, yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to being an arachnophobe.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So could you tell us why you decided to take the TV production course?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta need a script for that. I think it's like a very unique medium, because if you take like music, right, you're obviously listening to something, or if you have like a painting or like a sculpture or a drawing, you're looking at it. But depending on what mood you're in, or you know what you're doing at the time, you might actually lose like, you know, your focus on it, or your attention goes to some other thing.
Right.
But with film, like, it stimulates more than just one sense. So you're looking at something, and you're just like hearing it, and you can actually convey a story, and you have more leverage with that.
Right.
And so you can kind of like, you know, get somebody emotionally invested in that. And I think that's something that's very unique, because like if you like read poetry, you have to go out of your way to actually read it, or a book. Or if you're listening to music, you have to like listen to it more than once to actually kind of even remember it, even if you like it that much.
Right.
But with like film or video, or you know, TV, whatever you want to call it, if you're actually like just, you know, sitting there on the couch, you're just like flipping through channels, and you just see something, and without trying, you could just look at it, and for a couple of seconds it keeps your interest. More and more you look at it, and eventually you get emotionally invested to the point where you actually have like an experience that you remember, so it leaves like a longer lasting impression. And I think that's something that's very definitive about film that nothing else can really cover, or like, you know, substitute for that. And so having said that, you need to learn how to do that specifically, which is why I took the course, so I can learn actually how to, you know, technically actually do that and have that kind of like effect with film or whatever. So that's why I took the course.
That's a really great concept for TV. I love it. What are some of the most useful things you have learned in this TV production course?
Most useful things. So at first, like when you have like an idea in your head without learning anything technically, you know, transferring that into actually shooting something is like the thing that you have to get good at, basically, with everything, and that's what you have to learn. So with that, like, it's kind of like almost the same thing that you would learn with photography is kind of the same thing that I learned with film. And it's like you have to frame something. So like one of the things with like the rule of thirds, so you can't just have like a tree in the middle. It has to be like framed, so it kind of looks like a picture. So I kind of look at it in that sense when I kind of like shoot something, even though it's video, it's in motion. But the same like fundamentals like apply to that, and that's like the first thing that I really learned. The second thing was kind of like that really stuck with me was like, you know, you have to have like a depth of field when you're telling a story, because with that you control exactly what you want the viewer to see. They might not necessarily consciously look at it and realize that, or maybe they will, but like it's a very much like you have control over exactly what part of the story is really important to them. So you could have, you know, the main person and the background is completely faded, or you could have somebody talking but their face is blurry, and like the focus is on something in the background. So like it's kind of like you know, the director or the movie itself, you know, telling you like what you should be looking at or what is important that you should take out of the scene. So there's almost like everything is done on purpose, and I think like with that, with the rule of thirds, the framing stuff, and you know, using the depth of field, or just using simplicity and just showing one thing that's really simple as opposed to a bunch of different things where like the person doesn't know what they're going to be looking at. So all those things that are just kind of minute details like build into something that actually seem like you know, to seamlessly just kind of flow as a movie as it should be. So those are kind of the things that I learned how to, you know, do along with the editing, obviously.
Yeah, that's great. I saw some of your shots. They are beautiful, beautiful shots.
Thanks.
No problem. Tell us about the productions you created for the TV1 class, the action sequences, the New England Seasonal Project, and the Orange Project.
Sure. You know, with all three projects, they kind of build on one on top of the other, but there were different aspects. So with the first one, with the sequence, like I had to do a storyboard for it, and prior to that, you know, not doing any storyboard, not knowing anything at all, you learned really how to, you know, use your shots so that like every single like shot that it cuts to something else, it shows the detail of it. So like you can't just have like one long shot of the person walking; it has to go to something else, or you have to dissolve it to show like, you know, a lapse of time. Or you have to like zoom into exactly what they're looking at to see like perhaps like, you know, the reactions. So doing all that kind of keeps the viewer like attentive to what's going on. So I learned how to do that. Now with the nature project was the opposite, because I had no storyboard, so I kind of did everything on the fly with that. And with that, my focus on learning was not so much on storyboards, or you know, it was more like on the photography part of it. This, you know, the cinematography part, like, you know, the framing shots and making sure that everything kind of looks right. And the editing was really what like I had to sit there and spend a lot of time doing with that, because with the storyboard, the editing, you already know what you're going to edit, but with the nature thing, like you have to like sit there and figure out what shots you want to keep, because there's no sequence to it. So that's what I learned from that. Now with the Orange Project, with the short film, it kind of put everything together. So you have to learn how to use like action sequences, and you know, kind of with the editing that I learned from the nature, you combine that to keep like a good amount of pacing. So you don't want to just have one shot sitting there for too long, and you want to have just enough, show enough so that the person knows exactly what's going on, but not too much so that they just start kind of like wondering what else is happening, you know, in their lives, or just kind of like looking at the watch or something like that. And that all those things together kind of are the different aspects that I learned from the course. Very
nice. Now, I know you had one project that you thought was your best project. Can Can you tell us about it and while we sample it with video and music?
Sure. I mean, I think my best project, like, it's the orange one, but I haven't finished it yet. So for now, my best project is the nature project, and I really like doing it. I never really knew this about myself, but like when I was doing this, I only had to do 3 minutes of footage, and as I was doing it more and more, I ended up with 2.5 hours. And
wow.
It wasn't something that I tried doing, but I would just kind of, drive around seamlessly, listen to music, then I would just like look at something and it would, it would stand out, then I'd just pull over and shoot it. And that happened like 20 different times, so more and more, like I just kind of was shooting more and more footage, and it built up to that. And I think like I ended up having like an appreciation for like photography in itself,
right.
obviously, but I mean it's the same fundamentals when you're doing with film, but you have more control with it because you could actually kind of like have motion and somewhat tell the story. It's not so static, and then with the editing, you pace it to like what part you think that's more like beautiful, I guess, quote unquote, if you want to say. What part's like more dull, if it's just rocks or something like that. So you take those things out. So I sat there for hours doing that, but I actually really enjoyed the process of the whole thing. So that I would say that was like a really good experience, and at this moment, my best project. But yeah.
Well, you definitely invested a lot of time. I saw you. I was there.
Yep.
You mentioned the variety of things you learned in this course. What is the most interesting and important skill you learned, and how will you put it to use?
I really think they're all important, but since I have to answer the question to just narrow it to one, it's the one that I haven't like really spoken on yet, which is like, in depth, is like the editing. Like editing is something that's very technical. You can't like, if you can teach someone how to hold a camera and more or less, just click and take the picture.
Right.
That takes maybe like 10 minutes or less, depending on how smart the person is. But like with that, you learn how to do it. It's kind of like a bike. It's done. But with editing, it's a constant process of learning something new, because like I was getting help with this from Omar, and like at first you just know how to like take the in and the out, and then put that part. And then you look at it again, maybe just like longer than you thought it was, and then you have to learn how to splice it in. Or if you don't splice it, you have to override it. Instead of taking more, footage out, you keep it, but you replace it the same amount of time. And all those things it gets very technical. But once you actually learn how to do it, you get an appreciation, because you have so much control over everything that you have. And to some degree, I think subconsciously, that kind of like really intrigues me. So I just caught myself spending like hours doing it without really like knowing that it was hours, and just like all of a sudden it was like 10 at night. And I had to get kicked out because like I was here for too long. And it's something that I really liked, and I think it was like the most useful thing, because you can really do that with almost any kind of project. So whether somebody's doing a documentary, music video, or a film or TV, or some little skit they're gonna put on YouTube, it doesn't really matter. You still have to like go through the process of editing and compacting the thing into like something that you want to be a final product for somebody to watch. So I think that's kind of like the universal skill that you learn, because you might not necessarily want to become a cinematographer, or but you can kind of understand the concept of it. But editing, you have to be really specific as to where you want to cut it, or what you want it to look like, and what you want to add to it. So I think it was really probably my most useful thing that I learned from the class.
Right, that's awesome. Great. Today we got to meet someone who has cultivated a very unique outlook on life. Some might say it was because of his childhood. Nevertheless, he shared with us some interesting insights into what it was like growing up in a place surrounded by wildlife and rainforests. Some of his stories shed some light on what kind of animals you might come across if you ever do decide to step into the jungle. As a director, he wants to apply the skills he has learned in TV production 1 into future projects such as YouTube videos, comedy skits, music, and, of course, film. We would like to thank Favio for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed meeting one of our television's future directors, and we hope you will continue to join us each week to discover new talent. Thank you, and stay classy. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I put that.
Yeah.
This has been The New Directors with your host, Nadia Ayad, directed by Robert Johnson. I'm your announcer, Kevin Lachlan. The New Directors is a Norwalk Community College student production.